For every adventure, the podcast that dives deep into everything outdoor.
On today's episode of For Every Adventure, brought to you by Outdoor Warehouse, we will dive deeper into the wonderful world of hiking, multi-day hiking.
Yes, and we're going to chat to Janik Alheit, who's a natural landscape photographer.
He'll be telling us about the gear he prefers to use when he goes on his hikes and the amazing adventures he's been on.
It's such an inspiring chat, and I actually can't wait for everyone to hear it.
For Every Adventure, an outdoor podcast experience brought to you by Outdoor Warehouse.
All right. My name's Kyle, Adventurer Chanel.
Kyle.
This is the For Every Adventure podcast brought to you by Outdoor Warehouse, and I am very excited about today's episode. And just a shout out, last week we had Tim, the branch manager at Outdoor Warehouse West Coast branch. Make sure to go give that episode a listen on Spotify or Apple. Today we are going to delve deeper into the wonderful world of hiking, but sort of a different sort of hiking.
Yes, and we're also going to be joined by Janik Alheit. He's a natural landscape photographer, and it's going to be really exciting because, you know, it is hiking. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because if you want to be that good at nature photography overall and, you know, getting the perfect shot of the landscape, you've got to be an avid hiker. And I'm sure Janik's got a lot of adventures to share with us today. So looking forward to that.
Can't wait. And that's the thing. It's a necessity of the landscape photography job. Hobby, I would call it a job because there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's part of it. You need to get to where you can get the shot and you need the correct gear. And that's what Janik specializes in. He specializes in specifically landscape photography. But I did go stalk his Instagram. I don't know if you did.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
No, it's absolutely amazing.
And there were a few shots of animals. And there's also a very interesting history when it comes to wildlife photography. And this is more in the 1850s, where the exposure time was about 20 minutes for a photo. So you couldn't tell the buffalo, hey, Mr. Buffalo, smile and stay that way for 20 minutes.
No, so what did they do?
So what they did is they would have taxidermied animals and they would put those in the shots.
You're
and
not
they would
serious.
Yeah.
So it's not real.
It's real. It's just not alive.
Oh, my word. Okay.
Something like that. So you've done some hiking. We've discussed this in the previous episode. Was there ever an instance where you were out and about, maybe that fateful day when you had sneakers on Table Mountain, where you thought, wow, I need to stop and take a picture of this? Because as mentioned, you didn't carry a big camera on your back. You had a cell phone in your backpack or in your pocket, and you can just stop and take the snap.
We're so lucky compared to those days. And I mean, all of us think that we're great photographers on Instagram.
Exactly.
But it's all about that experience of getting to the place where you can get that perfect shot.
That's the thing. I think mankind has expanded a lot. So you need to really get into nature. You need to take that hike and you really need to, because you want a shot that not everybody else has, right? I think that's the way to think about it. You need to get into nature. You need to go as deep as you can. And I think the moment catches you and then you can take that photo. I'm the sort of guy who I would go on a hike and I would probably see something fantastic, a beautiful landscape. My first instinct personally is normally just to sit down and enjoy it. And then maybe I'll take a picture quickly. But I think that's something that varies from person to person.
But now just think about it, Kyle. If you were even more adventurous and maybe just, you know, a bit of a better hiker.
A lot better hiker.
Think about that shot you could have gotten.
I know, going into the bush, maybe climbing a bit higher.
The challenge is all in the hike, I think, these days.
But I don't think today's cell phones really get close to the actual gear you need to carry around. And I think we'll discuss that with Janik as well. He has a few tips and tricks and a few products that he's going to review with us. So I'm looking forward to that part.
Speaking of, we're just going to go into a quick ad break and then we'll be talking to Janik Alheit.
The outdoor life is for everyone. And our clothes are too. It's made to last in the sun, wind and weather. Whether you're fishing, hiking, camping or going to work, get all your favorite brands like First Descent, Cape Storm, African Nature, High Tech and Columbia all under one roof. Outdoor Warehouse, for every adventure. Also shop online.
For Every Adventure podcast, bringing you all the tips and tricks for your next adventure.
Welcome, Janik Alheit. How are you, Janik?
Hi, guys. It's good to be here. I'm very well, thanks.
Janik, you're a natural landscape photographer and a brilliant one at that. So I must say, the first time I saw you was Getaway Magazine that named you one of the 7 best SA landscape photographers on Instagram. So really, everyone needs to go and check out your work. We know that you're also a hiker. First of all, just maybe tell us, did you hike before you started photography?
I did. My background is very much an outdoorsy background. So my first adventures were without a camera, just in the mountains, hiking with friends, camping. The camera only came much later in my 20s.
All right, so that's where the passion came from, just the love for being outside.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always been about the outdoors. The photography has always been kind of just the vessel through which I communicate my love for the outdoors.
Okay.
Oh, that's fantastic. You also have an interesting story. You graduated in logistics, which led to a career in winemaking. How did the switch come about to rather pursue a career in photography and nature photography specifically?
Yeah, that's quite a leap from the wine industry to photography. So to give you the bullet points of how that all happened. So I grew up as a typical Afrikaans guy from the winelands. And after school, I went to go study. And you basically had 5 options. You become a doctor, engineer, a businessman, or, whatever the 5th option was. And I picked business. And I just ended up going into the logistics field for absolutely no reason. I just figured that I need a good degree behind my name. So I did a degree in entrepreneurship and then honors degree in logistics management. And I thought that would guarantee me a good job someday and I'll be set up for the rest of my life. Little did I know that it's probably one of the worst directions I could have gone into for someone with my personality type. So,
Yeah, it's true. You need that passion when you choose the job you want to do for the rest of your life. It's going to be a long life if you don't love what you do. So big ups to you. I don't think a lot of people are brave enough to take that leap to say, I'm going to leave this job that could look after me well for a lot of years, and I'm going to go after my passion. And you did that, and I think you did that really well.
Yeah, thanks. To give you a quick idea of how that transition happened, because I think it's something that a lot of people ponder about and want to do, but never actually do. And I guess I'm a good case study for showing that it's possible to change your career at the age of 30. And I took up a few more hobbies to kind of get my mind off of work, because work was so stressful. And I kind of went back to my roots of camping and hiking. And that was also happened to coincide with the early days of Instagram. Okay. So Instagram had just come out and I found all these adventurous people in Cape Town going on hiking and camping adventures on Instagram. And they inspired me to get back into my hiking and camping. So it was never really about the photography. It was more about just getting outside and doing awesome things. I then contacted some of these guys. They all happened to be amateur or professional photographers. I contacted them and asked them, can I join you on some of these adventures? Some of them said yes. And that's kind of where the bug started to bite when I started hanging out with photographers who were also into the outdoors. That's really when I saw that, hey, here's a cool way to be creative and do something that you enjoy. And I happen to have a natural knack for it. I think you have to be a bit of a nerd to be good at photography and to grasp these technical aspects of it quickly. So luckily for me, that was the case. And I think it snowballed from there. I got really into the subject and it eventually took over my life.
Wow, amazing. You must have a couple of crazy stories to share with us, like at least one of your adventures, please.
Yeah, I do. There's so many, it's hard to pick one that really stands out. But I think let me take you back to the early days. This was in 2017. I was okay at what I was doing. I wasn't doing this full time already. And I got invited by one of South Africa's, in my opinion, South Africa's best landscape photographer. His name's Alheit.From. We actually went to school together. Yeah. So him and a landscape photographer from England, I think he's from England, from the UK, they invited me to join them on an excursion to the Drakensberg. And I've never been to the Drakensberg, so I just said yes without even thinking twice about it. So we started planning this trip a few months ahead of time, like you do. And we soon gathered that our plans were going to fall apart getting closer to the date, because we had a look at the weather reports.
Yeah.
And turns out in the middle of November, in the middle of summer in the Drakensberg, the week that we were going to be there was predicted the biggest snowstorm of the year.
No way.
So
It had to work out that way, right?
yeah, exactly. So you can imagine how planning for a summer hiking trip got thrown, out the window. And all of a sudden now you are planning for a winter excursion in Africa, which is weird.
How much time did you have to make the changes?
So we had a few weeks because we were watching the weather charts and the forecasts, but it's hard to say, before the time that it's definitely going to happen. So we started preparing for in case it was going to turn into a snow adventure instead of a summer adventure. Luckily, a few weeks before we got the confirmation that yes, it's definitely going to snow in that week. So then all of our plans changed. And I was lucky enough to be working with a local outdoor brand at the time. And they kitted me out with everything I needed for changing from a summer excursion to a winter excursion, because I had no snowy hiking gear at all. So they gave me everything I needed. I gave them a list. This is what I need. They gave everything to me, and I kind of rocked up with everything that I needed to survive a week in a snowstorm. Yeah.
Well, that helped.
Yeah.
So the hiking you do, well, there's a goal to it. There's an end plan to it. When Chanel or I go hiking, we do it for the nature and the nice view, maybe getting outdoors, some fresh air. But you go out there and you have to be a serious hiker to get those shots. So how does your approach to hiking differ from those solely who go on a hiking trip for the adventure?
Yeah, that's a good question, because before I picked up a camera, hiking was so much easier. And in a strange way, the hiking part was more enjoyable, ironically. So before cameras got involved, hiking was all about the journey, not necessarily the destination. And that's a good philosophy to take when you're a normal hiker who doesn't do this for a living or who's not really so focused on getting a photograph.
Yes.
The best part about the hike is the journey, not necessarily the destination.
Exactly.
But as soon as photography got into the picture, mind the pun, it kind of changed from a situation of enjoying the journey to how am I going to make the journey the least sufferable.
Yes, the easiest, if that's a word you can use for hiking.
Yeah, how can I get to the point of where my work is going to happen the easiest?
Yeah. And now your situation changed in the Drakensberg, and you've now got that experience because you have to be a hiker to be the type of photographer you are. How did the gear change when you had to do that trip?
Yeah, so the biggest change for us was the fact that everything in summer is quite light. Your sleeping bag is very thin and light, and your tent doesn't need to be a Four Seasons tent. It can be just a summer tent. You don't even need to take a fly sheet. You can just use the inside of the tent if there's no rain predicted. So everything got heavier. I want to say twice as heavy. So now all of a sudden you are climbing this 3,000 meter high mountain with double the amount of gear on your back.
Yes.
And that's really where everything changed. So it went from being a pretty decent, easy hike to being quite a strenuous uphill battle, because you have all the photography gear, food, and now the extra weight in hiking gear.
Did you get the shot?
Tough question. I feel like a landscape photographer never really feels that he got the shot. It can always be better.
That's the curse of any artist.
Exactly. We're very self-critical, but I think I got out of the experience what I wanted from it.
Okay.
And I think that's the important part. I learned a lot, and especially when it comes to hiking, I learned that I've got a long way to go if I want to keep doing this for the next few years. So I did learn a lot, but I did get a few shots that I'm really proud of. Absolutely.
winter shots then?
Yeah, it's something that you never really see on a South African's portfolio, is a winter landscape.
Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it. I mean, the conditions changed and there were new challenges that presented themselves, but also you now had an opportunity to get that winter shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the time I was working, like I said, I was working with one of the brands, First Ascent, who's also one of the suppliers for Outdoor Warehouse. And I had like a trade exchange deal with them. They would give me all of the gear that I needed for this crazy mission, and I would give them content in return.
Okay.
So in return, they got really unique winter landscape content with their tents and their products, which they would have otherwise never had the opportunity to get. And in fact, I think some of those pictures are still used on their website almost, how many years ago? This is about 5-6 years later.
Incredible. That's awesome.
Just because it's such a rare occurrence and no one else has that type of content.
Yeah.
Talking about the gear, is there a lot of technology that helps? Is it continually improving to make your life hiking easier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I look back 10 years versus now, it's like the hiking industry has solved every little problem that you can run into. Those little things, little improvements that they make really make a big difference if you're going on these massive hikes. If you take something simple as hiking poles, if there's something wrong with the hiking pole, if it's not exactly the right thing, even if it comes down to the grip not being comfortable enough, that can irritate you for 7 days.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think we've gotten to the point where a lot of these small things have been refined to the point where there's almost nothing wrong with hiking gear anymore, which is great.
Goodness me. So it's just actually what you prefer at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no one perfect product for every need. Most of the products are great. It's just about testing out which one kind of fits your needs for what you want out of your hike. So for a photographer, my needs are very different than, let's say, a normal person hiking. So I need to test gear with a different mindset than the normal hiker.
So your must-have list then differs from a normal hiking specialist list, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite close. The only difference is I need to factor in a lot more weight because I'm carrying cameras and tripods and lenses on my back. So weight really makes a big difference for me. That's really the thing that kills you or makes it into an enjoyable experience.
And I suppose also keeping it dry. In certain conditions, which is also could be different.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges when we camped up in the snow. So to take you back to the experience in the Drakensberg, we got to the top of the Tugela Falls of the amphitheater. It's quite a popular hike. It's a few hours to get to the top. And we arrived on the day that it was still sunny. It was a summer day, right? So we get to the top and we pitch our tents, everything looks great, and we go to bed. The next morning, we wake up to, I would say, about a meter of snow covering the whole landscape, and the roof of your tent is kind of sunk in,
because nature made igloo.
Exactly. You couldn't even see a tent outside when I got out in the morning. So all of a sudden, it went from being a warm environment to an absolutely soaking wet environment.
Oh, no.
So if I didn't have the right gear in that instance, I would have had a terrible time up there because everything would have just gotten wet. So that's really where the difference comes in. You have to prepare for these worst case scenarios and make sure that your gear kind of matches that scenario.
I would like to get your hiking pro tip for a landscape photographer or a wildlife photographer.
Sure. My pro tip would be to make sure you look after your body. So, and what I mean by that is these excursions that you go through are often way more extreme than it would be for the normal person mostly because of the weight factor. So I am someone who has knee problems. So I had a knee operation. It was, in fact, a few months before the Drakensberg hike. So I was still kind of dealing with a weak knee.
Sure.
And I soon learned that taking care of your body is going to set you up in the long run for having more adventures. So it's easy in the short run to think that you are made of steel and you can just do anything, but all those things catch up to you eventually if you don't take care of yourself now. So the first thing I invested in before that trip was good hiking poles.
Okay.
And I never really used hiking poles before that, that trip. And after that trip, I never went anywhere without them. So that became like the number one tool in my hiking arsenal for making sure that I'm comfortable on the mountain and that I don't hurt myself. So hiking poles, absolutely a must.
That's very interesting. And also thinking long term, because you want to still be doing this in 30 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. So I was 30 when I decided to make my career change. It's now 6 years later, and I still want to be able to do this 10 years from now. So if I don't look after my body, it's going to be a struggle to try and climb up a mountain at 50. So true. I'm always thinking ahead, what's gonna protect me and protect my body. And the second thing to mention is one of the things people kind of forget about is how dangerous the sun is when you're out in nature.
Yeah.
And people forget to take care of their skin. So something I would highly recommend is a good hiking hat. And I prefer the wide brim hats rather than a hiking cap, just because the wide brim hats protect so much. It's like having an umbrella on top of your head.
Listen, I'm ready. I hear you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on board.
So the more shade you can throw on yourself, the better. With normal hiking caps, I've found that my neck always burnt.
Yeah.
But with a nice wide brim hat, you're protected. And the same goes for the rest of your body. So as far as possible, I try to cover up everything. So try to wear long pants as well as a long sleeve shirt, just so that I'm protected against the sun.
Well, there you go. You heard it from the man himself, Janik Alheit. Thanks a lot for the chat. Will you stick around and review a few products with us?
Absolutely. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Gear up for the perfect adventure with the largest range of adventure gear in South Africa. You can find anything from tents, gazebos, cookware and mobile refrigeration to clothing, lighting and smart devices. Everything you need under one roof. Download our handy packing list online or browse our expert advice articles to get you ready for your next adventure. Outdoor Warehouse. For every adventure. Also buy online.
For every adventure. The official Outdoor Warehouse podcast that brings you everything you need to know for your next adventure.
Janik, when speaking about your experiences, something stands out, and that is that you've got to be prepared for unexpected changes. And I suppose when you know you're going for this multi-day hike, you need the correct equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to take it back to your point, I think the most crucial part about making a hiking experience enjoyable is making sure that you've prepared for the worst, even if it means you're taking more gear with you than you might need. There's nothing worse than being up in the mountains for a week and you are sleeping uncomfortably, or every day that you're hiking, you have pain because you didn't pack the right gear. So I think, and I've learned my lesson. To give you an example, a few years back, we hiked the Fish River Canyon in Namibia, and I picked a pair of boots that were too small for me. And it ended up being an excruciating experience of pain for a week long in the middle of the desert. And the irony is, this is something, I guess this is a bit of a pro tip for someone, is that when you are looking at buying boots for hiking, the key is to not buy boots that fit you well. You have to buy bigger than what you think your real size is.
I see, okay.
Because when you're hiking, there's a lot of friction, and any friction that touches your toes or the side of your foot, that will create a blister. And if the shoe doesn't have space for your foot to move around in, to kind of slide around in, then you're going to develop blisters quite quickly. And that's something I unfortunately learned the hard way. And after that, I went straight back to Outdoor Warehouse and got 2 sizes bigger than the size boot that I had.
Okay.
Yeah, so I learned my lesson.
Yeah, definitely a pro tip. I'll keep that one in mind. What we would recommend is the high-tech Men's Altitude V Ultra waterproof hiking boots. Have you used these?
I have. That's the exact boot that I had in Namibia.
All right.
Yeah, so although I picked the wrong size, that boot was perfect for what I needed. It needed to be waterproof because we were doing a lot of river crossings throughout the hike, and it needed to be a high top boot, so to protect your ankles, because there's a lot of rock hopping. So it's one of the biggest reasons people get airlifted out of the canyon is because they roll their ankles, especially on the first day or two, because there's a lot of rock hopping. So your ankles need to be stabilized and supported.
I think a lot of the times the ladies, they feel like these look too like masculine, but I think it's important that there's the women's one as well. And I think it's quite important to protect your ankles that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And since that day, I never went back to normal running shoes or normal hiking shoes. I exclusively use high top hiking boots.
And when it gets to packing for your trip, is there any go-to product you prefer?
Oh man, packing, that's a whole journey on its own. It's something you kind of learn over time. You make all the mistakes in the beginning and then you figure out, okay, this would have made my life 10 times easier. Mm-hmm. So for me, these Go Packing cubes are kind of the go-to little tool that I use to organize my life.
What are packing cubes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So packing cubes are these square little bags that compartmentalize your life. So it's different size squares for different utilities and different products in your bag.
I see.
So each one has a purpose. All the small things go in the small bag. Your clothes go into the big one. And they zip up and stack nicely. So they save a lot of space in your bag as well. Because you have to think about when you're doing let's say it's a multi-day hike. Every day you unpack your whole backpack, repack everything in the morning, do the hike, unpack again, repack in the morning. So you kind of have to create a system for yourself.
I see.
So what I do is I divide everything based on category. So all my clothes go into one specific cube. All my digital accessories go into another cube. All my toiletries go into another one. So whenever I need something, I know which bag to pull out of my backpack instead of having to, search for it and scramble around and, you save yourself a lot of frustration.
Can you use those for food as well? Are you a big eater?
Absolutely, yeah. You definitely have to organize your food. I usually organize my food per day. So day one, I have a little bag with all of day one's food. So I know that day 5's food can be packed right at the bottom of my backpack.
Yes.
So I don't need to scratch around. I know day one's little pouch is right on top.
Okay, that helps.
And if you find yourself in a meter of snow in the Drakensberg, you can always go for a nice waterproof option, the C2 Summit 8-liter EVAC dry sack. Do you have some experience with this one?
Yeah, that's a great product if you are doing something like the Fish River Canyon where you are crossing rivers, maybe even something like the Otter Trail. So whenever you have to keep stuff dry, maybe it's even your camera gear, then a dry bag kind of replaces the cubes. It does the same purpose, fits the same purpose, but it has that added benefit of being waterproof. So if you think ahead and think, maybe I might get soaked on this trip, maybe opt for something like a dry bag rather than a cube. But if it's a normal sunny summer weather hike, then the cubes will do the job just as well.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show, Janik. I think we learned a lot from you. I look forward to seeing the next landscape photograph you're going to post on Instagram.
Janik, so what's next for you?
Yeah, planning the next adventure. That's always something that's on my mind. At the moment, I'm looking at going back to the Karoo. So I've got a farm in the Klein Karoo. And that's, funny enough, that's where my love for the outdoors started.
Wow.
So I'm going back there in June, July.
Did you grow up there?
I partly grew up there. So I grew up in the winelands, but we went to the farm most weekends to go farm. So it was like a second home for me.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I started exploring the mountains as a little kid. So that's kind of the origin story of where it all started. So in June, July, I'm going back to the farm and I definitely want to explore a bit there, maybe go hiking up in the Swartberg Mountains. And looking at further down the line. Maybe later this year, I want to go back to the Drakensberg. I feel like there's so many unexplored corners of that place.
You should go in November.
Yeah, I've been there twice and both times was in November. So maybe I should continue the tradition.
Well, it's in the word November. Go October. That's going to be better.
Yeah, maybe change it up a little. So yeah, I think that place is so unexplored still. There's always a new little valley to find. So it's just a shame that it's so far from Cape Town. But that's part of the adventure, I guess.
I'll definitely be looking out for that on Instagram. So your handle, just so that people could go and see what you're getting up to.
Yeah, so my handle is just my name and surname. So that's Janik Alheit. And I post most of my adventures on there. And then also my website, which is www.janikalheit.com.
Well, thanks a lot, Janik. This was really fun. You have some amazing stories, and it's great to see someone living out their passion. Not a lot of people get to do it, and I hope you inspire people to go out and chase that passion and really do what they love.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I always say that if there's one thing I really want to do through my work is just to inspire one person to get off the couch and go and explore nature, because it does wonders for your mental health. And it opens up a new world of adventure for you. So if one person gets up from the couch, great.
That's Janik Alheit. Make sure to follow him on Instagram. You've got the website. Also, outdoorwarehouse.co.za. Make sure you go make a turn there. All the products we reviewed are on the website, and you'll get the best deals from the best adventure guys, Outdoor Warehouse, for every adventure.
What an interesting chat, Kyle.
It was so much fun.
I must say, I'm that person now that feels inspired to take my cell phone, go on a hike, and just get that landscape shot. And especially because he said, it sounded to me like he almost said all the gear exists to make it comfortable and doable, even for me. So I'm definitely inspired. I'm sure everyone else is as well.
I think so. Just remember, take the cell phone with, get the shot, but also take it all in. Don't spend too much time on the phone.
It's about the journey.
Exactly. It's about the adventure. Hey, if you have any questions about today's show, you can send Outdoor Warehouse your questions on Facebook and on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. Also, follow For Every Adventure on Spotify and Apple. And next time, we're chatting to Kobus Potgieter.
Yes, he's the CEO of Outdoor Warehouse. So it's going to be a great chat, all about camping.
See you next time.
Join the For Every Adventure podcast as we explore the great outdoors.